my name is Conor Murphy. I'm in fourth year science education with biology and chemistry. And my FYP is based around self-regulated learning strategies and what potential effect they might have on student self-efficacy and learning in junior cycle science. So I suppose a background, we all have a background to education in some sense, whether you're studying it or whether you went through it in secondary and maybe higher level background. So questions that caused me to take this on as a project would have based around, I suppose, my own experiences in secondary school. And if people think back to that, were they the creator of their knowledge, or were they the receiver of their knowledge? So were they guided by the teacher? Did they make their own decisions, meaningful decisions? Did they feel like the subjects they went through, maybe theory or practical, had enough opportunities for them to create their own opportunities and decisions as well? And would they have felt confident in making decisions by themselves? So the first slide I prepared was on just one word: autonomy. So in any job, it's important to have some degree of autonomy. And when we look at that in a broad sense, what does it mean? It's the right or condition of self-government. So if we apply that to students or to a classroom setting, what degree can students be autonomous, and can teachers employ different strategies to maybe try and increase that or assist students in becoming more self-governed as well? So to somebody that might know what self-regulated learning is, it's defined as our ability to understand and control our learning environments, and it's a degree that we are metacognitively, motivationally, and behaviorally active participants in our own learning. So behavior plays a big role in it. Emotions, motivation, and as you'll see, I had a slide prepared as well. There was an image. There's 3 different components to it: cognition, metacognition, and motivation. So they all link into each other. One can't work without the effects of the other one interlinking with them. And when we talk about metacognition, some people might know what that means. We're just talking about thinking about thinking. So why are we making certain decisions? How do we know when to make them? When do we apply them into certain scenarios? So I had 2 research questions. The first one was, what is the effect of self-regulated learning strategies on student self-efficacy in junior cycle science? And the second one was, does the implementation of these strategies improve students' understanding and learning of concepts being taught in practical scenarios and theoretical lessons as well in junior cycle science? So like a lot of people may know that there's a new specification for science and for most other junior cycle subjects. So they all came in very, very recently. So I looked at that as a secondary line of research as well. How good is this new specification at nurturing maybe self-regulation in the modern day classroom? So just quickly, self-efficacy refers to the degree to which an individual is confident that he or she can perform a task. So it's basically a scale of confidence. So the methodology behind my project was action research was the main one, with elements of qualitative and quantitative methods being implemented also over a 3-week period. So there's a quote there: action research is a root derivative of the scientific method. So it is important. And I had another image here. It's basically a cyclical process. So you start off at the beginning of the cycle, and you analyze and reflect on the current literature, and you have a general idea of what you want to find out. You create a plan, and you have different strategies, and you implement them. Then you reflect on that and narrow down your results. And if changes need to be made, you make them, and you start the cycle again. And you could have 2 or 3 cycles or more. And then at the very end, when you feel like you've maybe changed certain elements and you've got reliable results, you make conclusions, claims, and explanations and recommendations for future researchers. So quantitative research, I suppose we all know, statistical approaches, and qualitative is more gathering and evaluating non-numerical data to gain an understandings of deep concepts. And my project had elements of both. So I took student learning in one section and student self-efficacy in another. So for student learning, I had a critical incidents questionnaire, which students completed after each intervention, so a weekly basis for 3 weeks. It was open-ended questions, and students could write the responses they felt anonymously and without input from the teacher or the researcher. So all I had to do was make sure the students understood the questions appropriately, and that they were able to give proper answers once they knew what they meant. On that, then from the self-efficacy side of things, there was 2 focus group interviews carried out, and they were recorded and transcribed, and there was 5 questions in that came from the self-efficacy and metacognition learning inventory from the science discipline. So there's a paper on that, and they were adopted from the motivated strategies for learning questionnaire. So that was another researcher for self-regulation that developed that. And again, they were open to questions. They could respond how they liked, and they also give a numerical value of 1 to 5 on the Likert scale of how they felt for each question. So for each of those, I conducted a Teamatic Analysis, which is a qualitative data analysis developed by Brown and Clark. So there's 6 steps, and basically you have it in front of you, your transcribe, you break it up into codes, into teams, sub-teams, and then you extract the main teams from that. So before I go into that, I'll just say that the 3 strategies I implemented were goal setting, metacognitive monitoring, and self-evaluation. So if you could see the slide in front of me, I've got another cycle from Zimmerman, who is one of the, I thought when I was reading through the literature, one of the most established people that researched self-regulated learning. So he has 3 phases: forethought, performance, and self-reflection. So it's a cycle. So you start off at the forethought, you move on to your performance, and then you reflect on what you've done. And the last phase will go and decide how you go on in the next forethought phase. So you can either increase or decrease in your self-efficacy and in your interest, I suppose, based on your learning. So the goal setting was the forethought phase. So I broke it up into SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Your metacognitive monitoring then is your performance phase, and your self-evaluation is your self-reflection phase. So the monitoring was especially important. They stopped after each goal. They reassessed where they were. They discussed with their teammates. Did they need to change what they were doing? Did they need to change their plan?
Just to tell you, you have a minute left.
Minute left. Yeah, perfect. So that was the methodology. So then results and discussion. So I found, although I took it from 2 different sides of learning and self-efficacy, I found that there was 5 teams came out basically the same from each one, and there was 1 extra one in the learning side of it. So use of strategies, the role of feedback on students, their internal development of autonomy, their skills development, and their use of skills and strategies in practical work. And then also in the learning environment or the learning scenario, they actually hinted at, unknowing to themselves, their self-efficacy levels. So they thought they felt more confident or less confident. So I suppose in terms of levels of self-regulation, that there's 4. So observational and imitative, they moved on to the 2nd level. So perhaps if there was longer time, they would have made that self-control level and self-regulated level. Feedback seemed especially important. And I suppose I have a couple of different findings, but I suppose the most interesting one to me was a couple of students, when they were presenting their work, they would come up and say that they were a small bit scared or frightened, they didn't know what to do. And I remained unbiased. I said, go down and talk to your group mates. You're going to have to come up in 2 minutes. And you could observe in them a kind of flight or fight response, or they call that in the literature top down, bottom up. So it's either ego protection or go for it, mastery and skill. The majority of them went for it after discussing. So that's kind of the main bit that I found interesting from it. And I would have included that in Zimmerman's model, which he didn't, but I would include that at any stage you could go to that choice of flight or fight, of mastery or ego protection, as they call it. So I'm probably out of time there. So if there's any questions, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. And thanks for listening.